In this section, we're going to go ahead and look at the logic behind the game over process. So what we're going to do is, first things first, look at the active boolean that we discussed earlier. So basically we have this isActive boolean that we set to false when the game first opens. When the new game is actually activated, it's set to false as well. And then it's set to true only when the line is within the active area. So when the line is actually crossing this blue line, the game line, this is when it's set to active, so only when that is true. When that's false, it is actually set to false, thus making it the active gameplay state. Once the level is finished, so once this timer ends, the timer that we created before that runs the endLevel function, this will activate this endLevel function. And in the endLevel function, we check the score to see if it is material to be the high score. We remove that per frame update listener because we don't need this to be running per frame while you are not playing. It also deactivates all of the movement, all of the player and level updates, and it deactivates the scoring system because all of that is run in this update function. So by removing this event listener, we successfully stop the game from functioning. Once that update has occurred, or once that remove has occurred, we reset the player and reset the level to their default setup. So the player gets set back to the center of the screen by its reset function. Its velocity is set to 0, so it stops its motion. Even if its velocity wasn't reset, it wouldn't move because the move function has been removed in this update, this listener. But this makes it so when the round starts again, you don't start in motion. You start sitting still. The level resets, and the reset for the level removes all the data from the lines because we no longer lead it, and it removes all the images, all the lines and the circles, because once they've passed we no longer need them and we can clear the level. It then updates the UI, so in case there was any last minute changes to the score or any other UI elements we may want to add, it makes one last update to the UI. Since that's normally done in this update frame, we want to make sure that it's done one more time. And then we activate the title screen. So we create a title screen using this title screen constructor under the name title screen with a lower capital, upper capital. And it constructs this object. So the title screen is the display group at this location. So you'll see its Y location is actually above the screen. It's negative 320. The X is 320, which is the center of the screen. So this is actually display.contentWidth divided by 2. Content width being the size of the screen. So we set that to half. We set it to negative 320, so it's well above the screen. We add the game over image, and then we activate the transition. So neither of these functions are called. They are just added to the title screen. So we do this transition that starts the object from its Y location. We tell it to move to the Y location of 420, which is about half the screen. We tell it the time of 1500 milliseconds, so 1.5 seconds. And then we set the transition easing type to easing out bounce. That is why it bounces when it gets to the end. It's using the out bounce easing transition. Then we also give it a non-complete function. So when this transition is complete, it runs this function, the self.addUI, which you see here. So once this transition is done and it's reached its final state, it runs this code. And this code adds the restart button, inserts it in the group, adds the high score label, inserts that into the group, and then creates the high score text and inserts that into the group. So this basic addUI function adds these 3 items. Now if we wanted to add more things, you want to put the name of your game or anything like that, you could create more objects and insert them into the self display group. So the last thing we need to do is actually remove this title screen. So to remove the title screen, we need to click the restart button, tap the restart button. Now we're using this on release, so it only activates when you've actually released on top of the button. And this function then removes screen, runs this function, deletes all the objects that are in the self display group. So anything you inserted will then be removed. And then it runs the new game function. And then it repeats from the beginning, starting over putting everything to its default settings and playing through another round. So that's the basics of the game over system and screen. In the next step, we're going to go ahead and look at the final project and the scope and the types of things we could potentially add to this project.